Hello and welcome to the CEO Blindspot show, where leaders lead leaders. I'm your host, Birgit Kamps, and today's guest is Kiet Tran, CEO of Lukka, a global leader in enterprise data management for digital assets, whose clients include well-known banks, crypto exchanges, and fund managers. Welcome to the show, Kit.
Birgit, thank you for having me. Really enjoyed being here.
Well, I'm so glad that our mutual friend Nick told me about you. And he said several things about you, including that you're very business savvy, you have good intuition, you're a good CEO, and apparently you're the busiest CEO he knows because you are also an investor in other companies and helping many leaders. And of course, I happen to know you're also a father, a husband, and so I kind of want to start by asking you, when do you sleep?
Yeah. So look, I need to tip Nick later on, but the truth of the matter is, a big reason why I'm the CEO of Lukka is because of Nick as well. As you know, Nick used to be the chairman of Lukka, and Nick's been a great friend. He's someone I admire greatly as well. I think part of the reality with all our lives is, you know, it's busy, lots of things are happening, but what we need to understand at any point in time is identify what's important. And for me, I always go by a rule of asking three simple questions. The first question is, whatever I do, is it important or not? Second, is it urgent or not? And three, can I control this or not? And I use this to really manage my life because, on a regular day-to-day basis, you have so much things going on. Sometimes it's hard to remind yourself what's important, what's urgent, what you can control or not. And what's interesting is, I think after the age of 40, I realized, and look, I tell my family this, my highest priority is my health. That's my number one priority in life. Because without good health, I can't be a good father. I can't be a good husband. I can't be a good son. I can't be a good brother. I can't be a good CEO. I can't be a good anything. And so for me, it's sad. You can see my calendar. I schedule sleep. And for me, I tend to sleep really well from 11 p.m. to like 5:36 in the morning. But what it does happen from time to time where my mind works really well early in the morning as well. So sometimes I will actually wake up 3 o'clock in the morning and just get on the computer and start typing and doing stuff. And that's really where I get some of my flow from time to time. But the reality, sleep is extremely important, something you got to properly schedule and really keep on the forefront of everything you do.
I'm so glad you shared that because I talk to a lot of leaders who are struggling with getting enough sleep right now. And when I was doing my research on you, I discovered that you are known to approach time as if it's a time portfolio. Is that what you were referring to regarding those three categories?
That's right. That's exactly it. Look, and we've touched on this briefly. Today is the first day to the rest of your life, right? So for me, I'm 47 to be 40 in January. And if I'm lucky, I get to live to 75, right? So you got to calculate from that perspective, not how many years I have left, but it's how many weeks I have left, how many days I have left, how many hours. And so your time portfolio is extremely critical. And a lot of times, you we get so focused on going after something and not understanding the why, not realizing what we get in return. And so the older I get, right, the more I value time because the less of it I have, right? And there's going to be a point in life where you realize time is more important than money. And so for me, it's really about how to manage my time portfolio.
Well, it seems to me like you have succeeded in managing many aspects of your life. So I'm wondering if part of your many successes have resulted from having a tough start in terms of, you're a Vietnamese refugee, and you came to the United States and you started working in the kitchen at some restaurants, washing dishes. Then you moved on to being a bartender. And then eventually you started your business career, if you will, at BlackRock. And then there you continued to manage your time well enough to get promoted continually. And You actually ended up leading a huge group of over 1,000 people. You've learned how to integrate billion-dollar companies. You have become an investor in several companies. And, and here you are today. Uh, you accepted a role at Lukka as CEO, and you just continue to take on challenges and turn them into successes. But I'm, of course, wondering, what do you attribute to your leadership success?
I think I achieved most of it knowing the fact that I'm not great at all. And that every day I'm learning. Because look, I think the reality is, to me, at a very simplistic view, leadership is to achieve through others. And how do you optimize signal versus noise? And a lot of times, you see weak leaders when they focus on achieve through others using short-term signals. For me, it's really about focus on the long-term signal. And long-term signal is simple. What's in it for the people that are around me to help do the things I need them to achieve together with me as a team? And, I leadership to, and I love this example to dragon boat racing, right? Where, you have two lines of people on each side paddling the boat. You have the person in the middle beating the drum, and that person don't touch or move the boat. They just beat in the drum, creating the rhythm, right? And I think creating rhythm is extremely important as a leader. But then more importantly, identifying teammates if they're moving water or they're moving the boat. A lot of times we confuse momentum with progress, right? It's very important to understand if someone's moving the water, moving the boat. But then more importantly, understanding if the people in the right position or not to really help move the boat forward. And a lot of that really requires an understanding of the give get rule. I think leadership is about give first before getting. And so, from my perspective, I haven't really done anything different than other people that work really hard, that have, that are way smarter than I am. I do think when I wake up, I feel lucky and blessed where I am, because I think no matter where you are in life, there's a big luck factor involved. And for me, I just appreciate a lot of the luck I've been given, right, in this lifetime. And it's not just about me working hard. There's so many people work hard. There's so many that are very smart, right? A lot of it is understanding the luck you have. And one of the things I realize is the more I care about other people, the luckier I get. The
Mm.
more I help other people, the luckier I get. So there's certain pattern recognition that I've had built up over the years that's helped me get luckier, right? But there's always definitely a luck factor to everything you do.
Wow. So then did you also get lucky with good mentors, or did you just keep making mistakes and adjusting accordingly?
Um, I definitely made a lot of mistakes, and I continue to make a lot of mistakes because that's how you learn, right? Um, you know, to me, fail is first attempt in learning, right? So if you haven't failed, that only means you haven't tried hard enough. And so for me, it's always about continuing to learn. Um, I look, I grew up, to your point, working at restaurants, right? I started working at restaurants at the age of 12. So my mentors are people working in restaurants. Um, what I've been so lucky and blessed with is, um, people that I interact with over the years and providing their kindness to really help educate me and help provide insights to allow me to grow. Like I remember when I was, working at the Four Seasons as a 19-year-old kid, right? I was the youngest they've ever hired to attend bar at the time. I met a lot of very successful people, and they're like, "Wow, this young kid works really hard." They'll tip me money, don't get me wrong, but they also tip me insights about life, and that's how I learn about certain things in financial markets. When I joined BlackRock as my first job, I had an amazing boss. His name is John Regan. I learned so much from him and those around him. So for me, it's about observing those that are around you and really having the humility to say, hey, you know what? I don't really understand this. Can you teach me? Can you help? Can you guide me? A lot of times, I think what prevents us from learning is our ego, because we either think we're the smartest or we know everything, etc., and that we're great. to be honest, I am not great at all. Like I'm making mistakes every day. I'm still learning. And because of that, I continue to evolve. Because one of the things you realize is, to be a leader 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and today, totally different, right? Talking about pre-COVID, post-COVID, um, and and times continue to change. And for us, we can't say there's a one-size-fit-all model. And so we just need to continue to learn and evolve and really watch those around us that are really good at something and say, "Hey, can you teach me this?" Right?
Yes, and it seems like you definitely believe in continuous learning because even today, you say you keep learning, even though you have an amazing track record of being a successful leader. And then to your point, there seems to be no one size fits all leadership these days. So, how do you know it's time for you to, again, learn and evolve? Do you ask your team for feedback, or what approach do you take to make sure that you keep developing yourself?
Yeah, I do think there's one thing that most people don't realize is if you can't lead yourself, it's very hard to lead others.
Say more?
And so for me, it's really about how do I become a better leader for myself, getting myself disciplined, being willing to ask the tough questions, being willing to understand what are the types of things I need to learn. And in a lot of case is having that self leadership. And for me, what I see a lot happen with people is this whole self-doubt, self-talk. Um, I hear a lot of people saying, bad things about themselves, are always expecting the worst in things in general. And in a lot of cases, it's hard to be a strong leader carrying that mindset. And and people say be an authentic leader, right? But if you can't constantly have that negative mindset, and when you message out all positive things, you're not authentic. So
Yeah.
it really starts with the internal self, right? How do you become a better leader of yourself in understanding and getting your mindset to the right place? Because you want to be authentic, say, I'm authentically positive, then you need to think positively. You can't think really bad stuff and try to communicate in a positive way. That's not being authentic, right? And so I've seen the confusion of a lot of leaders where they so focus on the messaging, on how to sound positive, but they don't focus enough on the mental balance they need to create for themselves to say, actually, why am I feeling this? What is wrong? I need to correct this first before I can deliver the right message to the team, right? You can't think one way and tell the team another way. That's not authentic, right? And that to me, that's very important. And a lot of times it's really about keeping myself in check. And look, there's one person, no matter where you are, what you're doing, you have to deal with for the rest of your life. That is yourself. So you got to learn how to like yourself. You got to appreciate the fact that you're not perfect, right? You still have a lot of things to learn. And just having that acceptance goes a long way, right? And
Yeah.
and being able to keep yourself in check, to me, is what I continue to work on every day to improve my leadership from that perspective.
So, what was the moment that you realized that?
And this is interesting. I realized this when I had my firstborn, right? She's 14 now. So this was about 14 years ago. Um, a lot of it was, hey, there's a version of Kit at work, there's a version of Kit at home, there's version. And the more I realized, no, there's only one version of me. There's no multiple versions, right? And at all times, I need to be who I am. And look, the great experience anyone can have, my personal view, is to be a parent.
Mhm.
Because you're looking at this
I
amazing
agree.
human being that you just helped create. Now, of course, as a man, I didn't spend that much time doing that. Right? My wife did a brother work, but the reality is, that's just one of the most amazing experience. And when I saw, like, how do I become better? And a lot of it was really self reflection to realize that I need to have a better relationship with myself. I need to manage myself because my saying always in the past was, "Oh, I don't have time. I'm too busy." You have time. You're not busy. It's obviously not important enough for you to make time, right?
Mm,
So you
mm.
really need to check yourself around what's really important and how you're spending your time, how you're spending your mind share, And a lot of it is really mindset and mind management.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to thank your daughter because made a big impact in your leadership. And, you know, eh, there's a lot of people, a lot of leaders who would say, well, I think my boss or my leader thinks highly of himself or herself. In fact, they it seems like they have giant egos and never do anything wrong. So, how and they never seem to adjust based on feedback. So how do you know the balance between, what I'm because I really want to highlight what you said earlier, because it seems to me few leaders have recognized there's not a one size fits all these days on leadership. So that does mean you're constantly learning. And then in Luca, in your industry, you're constantly having to learn new skills as well, not just leadership, but, raw skills, so to speak. So can you share a little bit about in a world that's constantly changing the way it is right now, how do you adjust? And you seem very happy with yourself. So how do you keep looking at what's working and what's not working currently?
Yeah, look, I think the first thing is having that relation with yourself and having that clear understanding. I think that's number one. I think number two is identifying the long-term signals versus the short-term signals. Look, I look back 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Oh, the world's changing. Everything's changing really fast. Everything's very different. Every decade is like that, right? It is changing faster. I think technology is evolving. But the way you treat one human to another, the human to human relationship, that shouldn't evolve too much, right? Leadership communication is really about it's what's in it for them, what's in it for me, what's in it for all of us. And I do think there is a difference between confidence and arrogance, right? I'm always confident, rarely right. And the reason why I'm confident because I know I'm not perfect. I know I'll make failures, right? And I'm willing to learn and do the things I need to do better, right? Arrogance to think I'm the smartest person in the world and I'm great. Because the reality is, I really don't think I'm great. And I know I have a lot to improve. I know I still have a lot to learn. But the reality is, every day I wake up, I feel extremely grateful for what I have. Because a lot of that is luck, right? And I know that. And so that's really what allows me to continue to improve and be a better leader from that perspective.
Yeah. And how do you help your people follow the same path in terms of, two things. One, upskilling, right? Everybody needs to keep learning these days. And number two, your time portfolio, what they're doing with their time. I hear that you're really great at communicating with your team. I think every Monday you send out an inspiring message. But you tell me what are some ways you keep your team rowing in the right direction, so to speak?
Yeah, look, I think the reality with the job of a CEO and I think a job of a leader is to focus more on the who and understanding with the company we're building, with the business we're forming, what we need to do, who the type of individuals, type of skill set, type of mindsets we need. And it's also to understand that look, every day I'm learning, which means I expect every day my team is learning. No one's perfect, right? So how do you help guide them as they go through a lot of the day-to-day mundane, right? Where, the false signals that they have all have to live through. And yeah, as a leader, I have a viewpoint where it's my job to help guide them where I can, right? Think of me as the
Mhm.
coach. And so every Monday morning, based on what happened the previous week, and I, try to reflect with a mindset to really help provide that guidance going forward. The least I can do is to really understand the the types of individuals I have around me and how to help them grow. Everyone learns and grow in a different way. So, there's no like one size fit all. But the one thing I look for are people that have a soft cement mindset versus hot cement mindset. So anyone in any role, I look at is this hot cement or is this soft cement? Right? If it's soft cement, it's something they are willing to really learn, evolve, and into the role. we always think, hey, I want to hire someone with experience. Experience sometimes are way overrated, right? It depends on what type of experience you're talking about. But in general, I do think having someone with a fresh perspective and willingness to learn and grow and evolve will actually yield a lot of results, for example. And so for me, it's really about continue to communicate with the team and provide clarity on why we're doing what we're doing. What is the vision behind Luca and what we're trying to solve? And then more importantly, how do we bring ourselves to work as a team? And how can we help each other grow? And I think if we all come to that mindset, right, it will increase our probability of luck. Right? It's really about the actions we take that will help increase our probability of luck. And that's really what it boils down to from that perspective.
Yes, well, I can confirm that whatever approach you're taking is working because before the show, I reached out to your COO, Dan, who I knew before you even joined Luca. And he gave me this quote about your leadership style, which I will read now. So Dan says that you are a true visionary who doesn't just see the horizon, you paint it for others, then you roll up your sleeve to help build the bridge that gets everyone there. And then that you lead not from a distant tower, but from the trenches alongside your team. And then he goes on to say more, but he obviously is very grateful that you are leading him. And it sounds like your team is also very appreciative of your approach to the importance of the who part of the leadership equation. So at the same time, you're in an industry that is evolving so rapidly. I am wondering how you also make sure that your team is interested in continuing to learn and adapt through changes so that they can remain excellent at what they do.
Great. Now I have to give Dan a raise after this. I had no idea you called him. So
I try to do my homework in advance to get all angles.
you do indeed. And look, I think that you're right. The industry is evolving so much. And I was saying technology is evolving so much. So for us, like every day, the best thing we can do for ourselves is say, wow, there's now an opportunity to learn. Things have changed, right? And I do think sometimes not everyone is attuned to change. I think in general, the reason why people are resisting to change is because of expected bad outcome. Because if I tell you I'll change every day and I'll increase your bank account every day, you're like, oh, I love change, right? But it's the uncertainty that I think gets to people a lot. And a lot of it is really about helping bridge that communication to understand here's why we're doing things differently. Here's why we're changing because our industry is changing, right? Here's why we're doing what we're doing. I think it's very important for the CEO's job is not to manage afar, but to be there for the people as they need you. And that's going to be very important because, you know, as someone at the seat, our job is to, beat the drum and create that harmony rhythm that everyone can now work towards that same common goal, right? I call it the coalition of the willing. And unless we carry that mindset, it's going to be very hard, especially in times of where we are now, where change is constant.
Well, it sounds to me like you were a natural born leader. So I'm curious, were your parents leaders or how did they influence your leadership style?
Yeah, I believe it or not, I learned a lot of my leadership from my mother. We growing up, we didn't have much, right? Look, so we were in a Philippine refugee camp, and when we came over, my dad was already in his early 40s. And so what can you do in your early 40s? Not really speaking the language well, not knowing English, and you work at a Chinese restaurant, and that was it, right? And the question is, how much can you make working at a Chinese restaurant? Not a lot. And so, we need to do what we need to do to make ends meet. But I see the management and leadership my mom in terms of running the household, like she's the CFO, CEO of the household, and I just see it. And my mom was very tough, right? She's very tough on me and on all our siblings. But we see how much she cared for us. She would last to eat. and she'll first want to be up. She's doing all the things for us, and just that unconditional focus on like putting our interests first beyond anything. Like that's how I learned leadership is from my mother from that perspective. And so when I first had an opportunity to manage and lead people, it was really about how can I do something for others first before I expect them to do things to me, right? And I
Mm.
continue to carry that mindset. This world needs to focus on a get rule. And the challenge we see some leaders is they just want to get, and don't remember to give, right? I think that's so important in whatever leadership role anyone's at. Look, I believe in karma in life, right? You know, you say no one's watching, someone's always watching, whether you know or not. Like he's watching or she's watching, right? So the reality is, you know, regardless, is trying to do the right thing when no one's watching, and that's what leadership is.
Well, I want to say amen to that one. So then please let me know what made you choose to accept the role as CEO at Lukka, because you're also an investor in other companies and you've got lots of other opportunities you could have accepted. So why Lukka?
No, look, I think the reality is, if you look at what's happening in digital asset, blockchain, crypto, you name it. The reality is, crypto asset as an asset class was actually the first asset class tested on the blockchain, right? The blockchain as a set of technologies. I think what everyone's come to realization is that it works, and there's a lot of benefit to leveraging the blockchain. And so what we're seeing is now a series of momentum of real world assets moving on chain. And what's interesting is, the work that the team's done on Luca over the last decade plus is to really get ready for that moment. And so, I tell the team we're sitting on the mother of all tailwinds. And so that's part of the reason why I'm excited to be part of Luca, because of the suite of solutions that we put together that really help the industry navigate towards that world. And so it's a great team, it's a great business, and I think it's the right timing as well. And like I said, I'm very lucky. So for me, I feel like my luck is increased, especially with being part of Luca as well. And I think a lot of it as well is, look, I grew up building capabilities for capital markets. So as part of the team that built the ABX, which is the ability to short mortgages. I was part of the early team to see the evolution of a CDS market, right? I've also helped pull together what we call a loan franchise at IHS Markit. We provide, pre-trade, post-trade solutions across an asset class. And so I've seen a lot of those tenants, and I see the value of what blockchain as technology can help solve for all these other asset classes. And the reality is, it's like in the early 2000s when the internet was prominent, right? Everyone's like, I want to sell online. So you have a restaurant or a retail store trying to sell online, and they have an online inventory system, and then they have an in-store inventory system, and they don't talk to each other, which means they don't have an inventory system, right? And so I see now in terms of whether it's CFI, DeFi, and TradFi coming together, they all need a normalized data layer to help them get a one-fi view across all of the assets. And that to me is where Luca stands, right? And the technology and capabilities that Luca and the team has built over the last decade. So I'm pretty bullish. I'm pretty excited with the team and the business that we have in front of us.
Yes, and if our listeners want to know more about Lukka, they can go to lukka.tech, and I'll put that in the description because it's spelled a little differently. It's Lukka dot tech. And it's, I feel that Lukka is lucky to have you as their CEO, just like I feel very lucky that you chose to come on my podcast to be my guest and contribute to other leaders. So, as we start to wrap up the show, uh, is there another tip or two you care to share with leaders, especially new ones who feel quite often lonely and like they're the only ones struggling?
Yeah, no. So, one parting message is leadership doesn't need to be lonely. It's only lonely because we make it lonely. Don't feel shy about reaching out, asking for help, open up. Look, it's funny. I talk to my wife a lot about stuff, like she's not from my industry, but I never feel lonely. I can talk to my wife. I talk to my kids about this stuff, right? I talk to others and I open up, right? If I need help, I go ask for help. Don't feel shy about asking for help. Don't think that you're the only person facing whatever struggle you're facing, right? The CEO as a role has been around for a lot of years, so there's a lot of people with experience. And again, there's no one size fits all answer. Every company is quite unique, but I think sometimes just going and ask for help doesn't mean you're weak. It actually means you're strong. Admitting you don't have an answer doesn't mean you're weak. It actually means you're strong, right? And to realize that we're not great. We're just here to learn and every day trying to do a better job. That's the reality, right? And you want to get lucky, just admit that there's a lot of luck and luck comes with asking for help.
Well, thank you again so much for accepting my ask today to be on this podcast and sharing your insights.
No, thank you for having me.